Welcome. We look at number 9 in our series on God's mission, my mission. This is the one that deals with mission to the powerful. The only downside of recording here in Estonia is that it's freezing cold outside, and I mean really freezing, well below the freezing point. And it is also dark generally. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, still dark outside. So I'm doing this video here on the inside where it's warm and at least there is some light. We're given material there in Daniel and Kings and John and Matthew and so on. But I want to concentrate on Daniel to begin with. His mission was to the powerful. He didn't really know that at the time. He was taken away into exile in the first exile there. And he served King Nebuchadnezzar and then Belteshazzar after him, and then Darius the Mede after him. He definitely had a mission to the powerful. He was given the opportunity to share what God had to say to those very powerful, all-powerful, you might say, kings of his time. Now, let's take that example from the time of Darius. Some of the people around Darius wanted to get rid of Daniel. They saw him as competition. They didn't want to have him around anymore. And so they made up this whole story of, oh, nobody should pray to the king for this time. And of course, Daniel went on praying to God 3 times a day, very visibly. So that, yes, he was guilty of breaking that edict of the king. And he suffered the punishment, but of course the lions did not come near him, and he survived. And Darius, who realized that he'd been tricked, took his vengeance on those who had betrayed Daniel. It's an interesting story. We don't always feel very sorry for those people who are on, quotes, the other side, but I'm sure God does. And he wants to try and win everybody, doesn't he? But here, back to the mission to the powerful. And this is where we have to be very careful. That quote from R. Adam Woods is important. I do not politicize Christianity, nor my discipleship, as Jesus did not politicize either his divinity nor his humanity. You know, it's easy enough to get sidetracked into those kinds of things and to believe that this is the way forward. But the danger with politics is it's really all to do with compromise, and it's very hard to really be a Christian in the political realm. Not impossible, but we are encouraged to even to do that at times when it's really important. But bear in mind that it's very easy to lose your way and not stay true to your principles. Thomas Paine said, government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil, in its worst state, an intolerable one. That's interesting, isn't it? That's really thinking that government is not really, quotes, on the side of the Lord. At times, yes, when there was like a theocracy in Israel, you could see that the political aspects were merged with the religious, and yet there were still problems there, weren't there? So we probably need to ask ourselves questions like these. How should we relate to government and church leaders when it comes to our mission? Are we to be told what we can and cannot do? Some countries do not allow us even to witness. What then? How do we do that? Those early Christians had a very hostile and negative government all too often, who persecuted them and mistreated them and tried to stamp out Christianity. So what do you do with all of that? But there are some examples, as we're given there in the notes for this time. We have Nicodemus, who was a member of the ruling council, who went to visit Jesus at night to avoid complications, you might say. And he became a follower of Jesus. And then what about Joseph of Arimathea, who was there at the very end asking Pilate for Jesus' body? And he was a disciple in secret. Again, He was with Nicodemus and arranged the burial of Jesus, and we don't know much more about him than that, but they were two prominent people in what you would call the political arena, because the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council of the time, was indeed very political. And then I want to conclude with that last verse from Matthew 16:26. What benefit is it for you to gain the whole world, yet lose your life? What would you give in exchange for your life? And when it comes to the rich, the powerful, the people who are there in power, I would like to ask them that question and ask them to think about what they're doing and what they will be held accountable for when Judgment Day comes.